Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be going over the TopHat homework. I saw some people were struggling, so I wanted to see if I could provide a second explanation. So I'm just going to do all the problems real quick in one video. Just two things before we start. One, if you have not done the problems, I would suggest at least giving your first try all by yourself. But since you only have 2 tries, I want you to work out your second try, but before you submit, you could go to the problem you're struggling on in the video. I have them all right, so you can trust me. But yeah, so, because I can't help you on the test, so I don't want y'all to just skim through this video, get all the answers, because you'll get 100 here, but then you'll be SOL on the test, so yeah. I won't have the problems up on screen. I'm not good with technology. I'm just recording this on my phone, but I will be showing working out problems that need to be worked out. I'm going to be going in order, so yeah. Let's start with question Q21. So the question is, every day we make many choices, but we can't avoid having to make choices because, now this question is a little tricky in its wording, so we look at the answer choices, and this is the most important thing since a lot of them don't make sense. There's too much time available. That's not true. We have too much time on our hands. That's the same as A, so you could roll both of those out. We keep changing our minds. I mean, it could be. We can't find enough things to fill our day. That's not true. That's, again, A, B, and C are all the same things. And then we can't afford to do all the things we'd like to do. Now, the key component of economics is scarcity. Scarcity drives everything. Nothing is infinite. So scarcity applies to everything. So the reason we have to make choices is because scarcity. And what is the thing that we have most scarce? Time. So we can't afford to do all the things we'd like to do, which is answer C. Yeah. So that's the answer to that one. And incentive is, so this one isn't even really y'all probably knew this off the top of your head, but so let's go through all the choices that are wrong and explain why they're wrong. Incentives are not always negative. She gave an example in class. I'll just give a different one because I don't remember her example. But, my niece is being potty trained right now, so whenever she pees, we'll give her a Skittle. That's a positive incentive. So incentives are not always negative. Available to individuals but not to governments or businesses, that's not true. We offer incentives to farmers called subsidies. We'll learn more about that later, though. A reward that encourages an action, but not a penalty that discourages an action. That is partially true. The first half is true. The second half is not true. Incentives can be both positive and negative. A negative incentive is if you speed, you get a fine. Yeah, so the correct answer is a reward that encourages an action or a penalty that discourages an action. Question 3. So, choose the definition that gives the best overview of economics. Economics is the social science that studies the choices of blank. As I said earlier, the key component, the most important thing that drives us all forwards is scarcity. So the answer is that we make as we cope with scarcity. Yeah. So factors of productions are grouped into 4 categories, which are, now this is something you just need to know. There's no way to reason your way through it. Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Say it 10 times, write it 10 times, read it 10 times, do whatever you gotta do. You need to know this. And although it's not part of the question, capital could be human capital or physical capital. Human capital includes skill sets, so a degree, and then physical capital is a machine, so a pizza oven would be an example of physical capital. Okay, so I should have been saying the question problems, my bad. Q2 4B. Blank is an example of blank. So this is the factors of production again. Writer James Patterson is an example of labor. That could be right. So this was one I had to read through and I found kind of difficult actually. A salmon river is an example of capital. Now that is one you can easily rule out because a river is not a skill that you have, nor is it a machine that you've bought. It's nature, so it would be an example of land. A police officer is entrepreneurship. No, it is not. A police officer is That's just like, that's your capital, that's your experience. You aren't innovating anything, you're just going into the field. And then the Grand Canyon is an example of land. Now, I overthought this a bit and thought that maybe the Grand Canyon was like entrepreneurship, since they, you know, they charge people, they make tours, they make money off of it. Don't be stupid like me. It's land. That's your answer. So writer James Patterson is labor. I think what they're going for here is that he's more entrepreneurship, since writers, like, you know, big smart stuff. And writing isn't really considered labor. But yeah. Q25. Land is the blank that we use to produce good or services. Land is the gifts of nature or natural resources. That's just like, again, a definition. So, yeah. Q26. The blank that people devote to producing goods and services is labor. So the options are time and money, money and consumption of goods and services, and work time and work effort. So we do know that time is going to go into labor. So the time that you're working goes into labor. And then, you know, the effort you actually have to work goes into labor. Yeah. Money doesn't really go into your labor. It's your payment for the labor. So that's why C is wrong. And there's more that goes into it than just time, because like it's specifically work time. And then for D, money, we already said why money doesn't go into it. So yeah. Q27. Human capital blank that people obtain from education, on the job training and work experience. Blank that have been produced in the past and businesses now use to produce goods in its capital. So human capital is the knowledge and skills. Like I said earlier, your human capital, this is another one that you just need to know the definition of it. Your human capital is the your knowledge, your skills, what you put on a resume, and it's why they should hire you. And yeah. And then the second blank is blank that have been produced in the past and businesses now use to produce goods and services is capital. So this is tools, instruments, machines, buildings, and other items. The second one is physical capital. So it wants you to know what both of them are. So make sure you know what both of them are. I'll try to speed up because I'm kind of going slow. I tend to ramble, so feel free to skip through to what you need. I'm sure you've done that already. Which of the following is an example of entrepreneurship? So Honda Civic and Toyota Corolla are the best-selling compact cars in North America. That might get you, but that's just a fact. Like, that doesn't really mean anything. Entrepreneurship goes into that, but that example does not say it. B. Sam Walton created the multinational retail corporation brand Walmart in 1962. That is the correct answer. There's obviously entrepreneurship that goes in opening a business and innovating the business. But let's look at the other two and see why they're wrong. Okay, we're still recording. So industrial output in China is increasing. That's not really entrepreneurship. That's, again, just like, that would be an example of the output. But it's not saying who is doing it, what they're doing to increase the output. It's just saying that. And then Facebook is a social networking site. It doesn't say anything about the creation of Facebook. It says nothing like that. It just says it's a social networking website. And from that, we don't know if it was innovative or not. Okay. Q29. Resource use is efficient when. Okay, so this is one of the ones that I had to take 2 tries on because I was a stupid dumb and didn't read it thoroughly. So resource use is efficient when it is not possible to make someone better off without making someone worse off. That's just another principle of economics, but you can easily see it with the PPCs, production possibility curves, that we learned about. So when you have your production possibility curve, if you're productively efficient and your resources are all being used, you're producing on the line. And whether you go up or down the line, you're sacrificing something. And that's what happens when all your resources are being used. If you only have like 50 Skittles, and you want to give someone more Skittles and they've all been distributed, you have to take them from someone else. So yeah. That's why this is that. That's Q29, by the way. So Q210. Which of the following illustrates a trade-off? New York is an expensive city. No trade-off there. Randy enjoys ski vacations. Okay, well that's his benefit. What's the cost? And for New York City is expensive. That's the cost, but what's the benefit? Tom prefers iPhone while Randy prefers Android. They both are just saying their preferences, but they're not saying the cost that comes with it. There's no trade-off there. That's just a statement. I will study for my exam instead of going to the movie tonight. So here, he's saying he will study for the exam, but the loss in doing that is going to the movie that night. He is trading the movie time for the exam studying time. So that is a trade-off. So the answer is B. Q211. The benefit of something is the blank. So this is a double blank question, so I'll just go with the first one. The benefit of something is the gain or pleasure it brings. It's obviously not the cost of the activity, and it's not the sum of the gain and loss that arises from the activity, because that's marginal benefit. It's trying to trick you there. And the highest value alternative, which is the other question, that is opportunity cost. So the gain or pleasure it brings. Benefit is determined by preferences, by what a person likes or dislikes, because that's what preferences are. So yeah, again, another thing that you just kind of have to know. A lot of these starting questions are things you just kind of have to know. There's not too much reasoning through it. Luckily, they're pretty straightforward. So yeah. It's loading right now. Okay. Q12A. A rational choice is blank. Now this one is kind of hard because there's the option always the right choice, which you might think is right, but something that I've learned with my economics, with my experience in economics classes, is that there's always like 2 or 3 that you know aren't it, and then 2 that like you're really torn between, because it's one of those, we'll pick the one that best fits. It's really annoying, but there's kind of a pattern that you can sense. So yeah, a rational choice is one that compares the costs and benefits and achieves the greatest benefit over cost that makes the person that's making the choice. One thing about economics that is just a solid principle is always think rational. Everyone's going to think rational in every example they ever give in this level of class. Which is also like ceteris paribus, is like everything held equal. Look at only what they're giving you. Everything is rational. So yeah, that is the answer, because you are literally quantifying what is the absolute best thing for you to do. So yeah, always the right choice is very tricky for why it's wrong, but that's just like such a vague thing that you don't want to pick it, because there are examples where the best thing might not be the best thing, which sounds very oxymoronic, I know, but you want to go with the question that gives you the most to go off of, if you will. Excuse me. Alright, so Q12B. Choose the statement that is incorrect in regards to rational choice. Okay, so it is never a rational choice to decide to enter the labor force immediately following high school. So that is just not true. In some cases it is smarter to join, just depending on what you want to do. It's just like, things are different for everyone. If you didn't do great in high school, that's just not your thing, and you want to take up a trade of sorts, and instead of going to trade school, you want to learn under someone, that could be an example. Rational choices are different for everyone, so to say it is never a rational choice to do something so broad will usually be the right answer. And then the rest of them are all pretty rational. I believe in y'all to narrow that one down. But yeah. Question Q2, 13A. All of the following are incentives for you to take a class in summer school, except... Okay, so let's go through all of the possibilities here. There's A. Your failure in the winter course does not allow you to continue your education until you earn credit for the course. That is a huge incentive. You need, like, if you failed in winter and you just cannot continue your education, like the next semester, you need to make up that class. You can't afford not to. That's a very strong incentive. It's a positive incentive, and the incentive is you can finish your degree. The smaller class sizes in summer, or there's smaller class sizes in summer, which makes it easier to get help from the professor. Again, that's a very positive incentive. That's a good thing. The course fits more easily into your summer schedule than your fall schedule. Again, a good thing, a positive thing. It's great. You prefer summer outdoor activities to winter outdoor activities. This is neither a positive nor negative incentive. This has nothing to do with what we're looking at right now. Question 13b. A benefit from your decision to attend summer school is blank, and the cost of your decision is blank. So, the benefit is the credit you earn, and the cost is the tuition you pay. Whoops. I don't want to resubmit that to be wrong. So, let's look at the other ones and see why they're wrong. You might raise your GPA. Okay, that's a benefit. And the cost is there's fewer people on campus during the summer. That's a good thing. That's just better, in my opinion. You have easier access to the professor because the class is small. That's good. So far it's right. There are fewer people on campus during summer. Again, that's a good thing. So that's not a cost. You don't lose anything from that. You can't work as many hours at your summer job. That's not a benefit. That's a cost. So that is automatically wrong. This is kind of random, but a tip of advice: if you're ever like reading a question like this, and then you say, "Well, technically B could be," just stop. Almost always go with your gut when it comes to something without numbers. If there's numbers, check your work. But whenever it comes to like principles of economics, never second guess yourself. It's so easy to go down a rabbit hole. I feel like that's why people struggle with the class so much. So your decision to attend summer school is rational if your benefit from the summer school is greater than the cost. Rational thinking. Benefit exceeds the cost. That's just as simple as it is. Always what it's going to be. Oh God, this one was very messy because there's 6 blanks. So question 14. A choice on the margin is a choice that is made comparing all the relevant blank systematically and blank. So whenever you're thinking on the margin, you're comparing all the relevant alternatives. This is the principle behind opportunity cost. You're not considering every possible alternative. You're not Doctor Strange or anything. You're just like, you're thinking, what could I do instead? And you weigh like the 3 outcomes, let's say, and you find out what's best. So, a choice on the margin is made by comparing all the relevant alternatives systematically and incrementally. Because when you think on the margin, you don't like go in, like, so whenever you're thinking on the margin, I will use the example she gave in class. To watch another episode of Netflix or to go to sleep. Whenever you watch whenever like you sit down to watch Netflix, you're not I'm gonna watch 9 episodes no matter what. Nothing's gonna change that. Maybe you do. I don't think that's normal. But yeah, so you watch like 4 or 5, and you're like, okay, so should I do this? And every single increment of an episode, you'll wonder, should I go to sleep or should I keep watching? And there's the little marginal analysis you're doing in your head that you don't even realize. You're like weighing the costs, you're weighing the benefits. You're like, well, it's getting really good, and Jessica might finally say she loves Bill, but I have a math test tomorrow morning. Maybe I should go to sleep. It's that kind of thing. So that's the first 2. And then marginal cost is the blank that arises from 1 unit of blank in an activity. So the marginal cost is the opportunity cost that arises from 1 unit, from a 1 unit increase in the activity. So this is like I was saying, you're watching your show, you decide to watch another one. Well, what's the marginal cost? It's maybe you'll lose 5 points on your test because you're not going to get as much sleep. since you decided to keep on watching TV. And then the marginal benefit is the benefit that arises from one increase of the activity. So this one's a little harder to quantify. But let's say, so you decide to watch the extra episode and it's everything you wanted. So you gain like 5 happiness points or whatever. It's hard to quantify emotions, but yeah. So hopefully that made sense. That was a bit of a loaded question, and I kind of was like rambling on. But yeah, hopefully that made sense. Question 15. Oh, yes, we're getting to the numbers. Eric is a medical student who buys 4 cups of coffee every day, which costs him $8. He decides to buy 1 more cup of coffee each day, and his expenditure on coffee increases to $10. The marginal cost of Eric's cup of coffee is, okay, $2. Marginal cost is every additional thing, what it costs. So you look at it, so there's like the cost table, and the cost goes 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. But the marginal cost is just 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. It increases by 2 every time. So that's what marginal cost is. Yeah. Always think on the margin. Byron plays softball 2 nights a week, and his current grade in economics is an 80%. He decides to play softball 3 nights a week, which makes his grade fall to a 65%. The marginal cost of Byron playing softball 1 more night each week is, again, so let's look at what he does. He plays softball for 1 more night, and his grade goes from an 80 to a 65. So what's the change there? You just do 80 minus 65, which is 15. He loses 15 percentage points. Okay. People make rational choices by comparing benefits and costs. Like we've been saying, oh wait, sorry, this is question 17. But like we've been saying, benefits and costs, that's what rational decision making is. You just weigh your benefits, you weigh your costs, and then you do whatever's the best. You do whatever gives you the most benefit. Or sometimes the least cost, but let's not get into that. You can stay in school or you can quit to get a full-time job. You have an incentive to stay in school if the marginal benefit from staying in school is greater than the marginal cost of staying in school. That's like the most simple and plain answer. It's perfect. Benefit is exceeding the cost. That is a positive incentive. That is a good thing. That's question 18. I'm struggling right now. Okay, there we go. Yes, question 19. Which of the following is the opportunity cost of attending a ball game? Okay. Opportunity cost is what you lose when you choose. Or I think the definition she gave was what you forego, or the next best alternative is what you lose out on. So, but it also includes both the physical cost and what you could have done, the next best alternative. So the physical cost of the game will be the ticket and the transportation to the game. But then your next best alternative is also part of the opportunity cost. Like you also lost out on that. So the opportunity cost of the game is the things that you could have bought with the money that you spent on the ticket and the bus fare. That is very thing. Because like those themselves don't include into the cost, but it's what you could have bought with that money. And then the bus fare, and then what you could have done with your time. So let's say, I don't know, I'm just going to do this example because it makes sense. You had an economics test the next day. And oh no, you could have been studying for it. But yeah. Perfect. We're getting into numbers. So you plan to travel to Europe this summer. If you do, you won't be... This is question 20. Gosh darn it, Jordan. Just got to say the questions. You plan to travel to Europe this summer. If you do, you won't be able to take your usual summer job that pays $10,000. So I'm going to start writing this out. How do I flip the camera? Wait. Can I flip the camera? This is embarrassing. Is this button flip the camera? No, I just took a picture. Wow. Okay, can y'all see this? This is not going to plan. Okay, this is a disastrophe, but we'll rock with it. Hopefully you can see this. So, your usual summer job pays $10,000. I wish my summer job paid that. Home Depot is not that kind. The cost of transportation is $1,000. Your visa costs $300. And then your living expenses are $1,700. So let's add all this together. So here's your physical costs. Your physical costs for the trip is $3,000. So the trip costs $3,000. Trip costs $3,000. But when you go on the trip, you're losing out on this $10,000 you could have made from your summer job. So that's also factored into the opportunity cost because you could have been making that money. So, and then the $3,000 is what you could have spent it on. So your opportunity cost is $13,000. Here, wait. Hopefully you can see that clearly. Yeah, I'll be right back. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I'm glad that y'all were able to see that. I had to just check on it real quick. I'll try to make it a little more clear next time. But yeah. So if you lose out on the $3,000 you could have spent on other things, and then the $10,000 you could have been making, that is $13,000. Okay, so the night before your history test, you decide to watch television instead of reviewing your notes. You get a 70% on your test compared to the 80% you normally score. You blank, and the opportunity cost of your evening of watching television was blank. So you faced a trade-off between a higher test score and an evening night of television. And the cost of this decision was 10% falling from your grade, since you normally make an 80, but then you made a 70 this time around. And that was because you decided to watch TV instead of study. Okay. So this is question 22. Which of these statements are positive? So let's just do a quick review on positive and normative statements. Positive statements are statements that are facts. They're largely factual. And then normative statements are opinions. They're what should be. So if you ever see the word should, it's, hey, sorry, my camera died, but, or my camera got full on storage. But, if you ever see the word should, it should be a normative statement. So with that, it should be a normative statement because it's an opinion. So when you look at the 4 statements it presents, it says, we should save the rainforest. So we know that's not a positive statement. The greatest number of accidents is caused by drunk drivers. That's a fact. Most iPods are purchased by teenagers. That's a fact. Every house should have a pet. It's not a fact. That's an opinion. So that means statements 2 and 3 are both positive statements. Question 23. Which of the following is a normative macroeconomic statement? Macroeconomics is the bigger picture. So corporations, government, all that. So the U.S. government should increase unemployment benefits. Since that word has should in it, that means it's a normative statement. That's an opinion, and it has a macroeconomic scale. So yeah, that's why that's the correct answer. It's the only one with both an opinion and macroeconomic scale. So the production possibility frontier, or I say production possibility curve, just so y'all know, it's the same thing. So the PPC is the boundary between the combination of goods and services that blank, given the available factors from production that state technology. So the blank can be produced in the combination that cannot be produced. Again, this is when you're productively efficient. You could only produce on that line. Anything outside, you do not have the technology or resources to currently produce. I shouldn't say that. We're not there yet. We're not to the factors. We're not there yet. But yeah. So, okay. Again, that's a definition one. Just need to know. Oh, perfect. We're getting into more graph ones. So, question 25A. The figure shows, I can't show this, so you have to go along with me if you need help on this one. The figure shows the production possibility frontier for a firm that produces pet food. Complete the following sentences. Point A is blank and point B is blank. So point A is on the curve, so it's attainable. It is what we can currently do. And point B is outside of the curve, which means it's unattainable. With the current technology, we cannot produce there. Question 25B. Same graph as the last one. So the figure shows the production possibility frontier for a firm that produces pet food. Complete the following sentence. This PPF blank illustrates scarcity because blank. So it does illustrate scarcity, since everything about economics is due to scarcity. So it does, and that's because the firm cannot produce on points outside of the frontier. We know that. And as the firm moves along the production possibility curve, but as they move across the production possibility curve, they're taking something away from the other thing that can be produced. So for dog biscuits and cat food, every time you go a bit towards dog biscuits, you're taking resources from cat food, since there's scarcity, and that's how it illustrates scarcity. Question 26. Harry produces 8 balloon rides and 6 boat rides an hour. Harry could not produce more balloon rides without producing fewer boat rides. Harry is blank his production possibility frontier. So he is producing on his production possibility frontier, because if he's to take away from his balloon rides, or if he's to try to increase his boat rides, he's going to have to take away his balloon rides, meaning there's no extra resources that he can use here. In this case, the resource is time. So yeah, he's producing on. So why does the PPF bow outwards? And what does this imply about the relationship between the opportunity cost and the quantity produced? The PPF bows outwards because as we move from point A to point B and point C, the opportunity cost of producing a jacket increases. Resources are not equally productive in all activities. She gave this example earlier with like the blue highlighter and the pink highlighter. Actually, that's not really a good one. Like with the sticky notes and copy paper. Not everything's going to transfer over perfectly, so you're going to become more and more inefficient. That's why the curve has this shape. Whenever it's perfectly linear in exchanges, it'll have a shape like this, a perfectly linear shape. But here it bows outward because, it just kind of makes sense that not everything's going to translate perfectly between jackets and golf clubs. Question 28a. Distinguish the production efficiency and allocative efficiency. This is a definition one. So productive efficiency is whenever you're producing at the absolute perfect amount. Like you're using all your resources, everything's being used perfectly, you're producing on the curve. Allocative efficiency is a bit more specific. If you're allocatively efficient, you will always be productively efficient. If you're productively efficient, you won't always be allocatively efficient. It's an umbrella term. Allocative efficiency is whenever you take your productive efficiency and move it to the point where society most wants, where I'm not going to say that, we're not there yet, but where the perfect combination and balance between your two goods is. So yeah. And the answer is production and allocative, but yeah, you can use that to answer that. So question 28b. All points on the PPF are points of blank efficiency. Productive efficiency. Like I said, if you're on the curve, you're productively efficient. You're using all your resources. So the second blank. When we produce at a point on the PPC that we prefer above all other points, we achieve blank efficiency. Allocative. Perfect. That's just the definition I gave. What society most prefers. Question 29a. This graph shows Brazil's PPC for ethanol and food crops. If Brazil increases food crop production from 2 tons per day to 3 tons per day, the opportunity cost of an additional ton of food crops is blank barrels of ethanol. Perfect. Okay, so this is, you have to be looking at the chart here. So whenever we go from 2 to 3 food crops, you have to look at the point. So when we have 2 tons of food crops per day, we are producing 54 barrels of ethanol a day. But whenever you want to move up to 3 tons of food crop a day, you're going to have to take away from your barrels. So you're going to take away, so then you're producing 40. So the opportunity cost there is 14. It's 54 minus 40 since you're going from 2 to 3. If you don't have it pulled up, this is going to be way more complicated. So if you want to be looking at the graph while I was saying that, because it's going to help a lot. Sorry that I can't show it to you. I don't really know how to do that kind of stuff. Question 29b, it's the same graph, so same production possibility curve. If Brazil increases production from ethanol 40 barrels a day to 54 barrels a day, The opportunity cost of additional barrels of ethanol is blank of food crops. So this is the exact same question, but the other way around. So now we're producing 40 barrels of ethanol, and we want to go to 54. So when we're producing 40 barrels of ethanol, we're producing 3 tons of food crops. But when we want to produce 54 barrels of ethanol, we're only producing 2 food crops. So you're losing out on 1 food crop. It's 3 minus 2. So yeah, 1 ton of food crop. Yet again, we have the same PPC. So the opportunity cost of producing an additional ton of food crop is equal to blank. So, this one's a little weird. So, let's read this again, my bad. Question 29C. The opportunity cost of producing an additional ton of food crops is equal to the inverse of the opportunity cost of producing an additional barrel, which doesn't make sense, which might sound a little weird, but it makes sense if you think about it. The inverse of something is 1 over that. So there's only 2 things going on here. So when you take away from one, it's gonna go to the other. So on a PPC, the opportunity cost between 2 points, whatever you take away from one, so let's say on this one, going from the 54 point to the 40 point, your opportunity cost for going from 54 to 40 will be the same as 40 to 54, but the only difference is you put a 1 over it. It's very hard to explain without numbers, but yeah, the inverse of opportunity cost of producing an additional barrel of ethanol. I'll explain this better when we get to a few upcoming example. Okay, so I apologize for the noise. Brazil's PPC illustrates the Ooh, that's pretty loud. I'll be back when it's over. Okay, so Brazil's PPC illustrates scarcity because Brazil blank. If Brazil produces 40 barrels a day, it must produce blank tons of food to achieve productive efficiency. So it illustrates scarcity because we cannot attain points outside of the PPC. Again, when you're on the curve, you have to take away something from the other. Like if I want to produce more ethanol, I'm gonna have to take away from some food crop. And then, what's the next question? Oh yeah. So if Brazil wants to produce 40 tons of food a day, it must produce blank to be productively efficient. When you're productively efficient, you're on the curve. So we go to 40 on the y-axis, the ethanol, and we go over to the point on the curve, and then we see which is point B. And at point B, we're producing 3 tons of food crop a day. So the answer is D. Question 30B. Again, same graph, complete the following sentences. Brazil faces a trade-off in its PPC because it increases the quantity of food produced, blank. So when it increases the quantity of food produced, it decreases the quantity of ethanol produced. Again, it's always a give and take, a tug of war here. This is how we produce the trade-off. This is how we show that we're using all our resources. It's like, I sound like a broken record, but that's how that's just like how learning works, you know? So yeah. So this is a new PPC. This figure shows Jessica's PPC. Jessica is currently producing 15 bags of chips with no mints. If Jessica produces 1 bag of mints, her opportunity cost for the bag of mints is how many chips? So she's at 15, which is 0 mint bags, but she wants to produce 1 mint bag. So we go over to 1 on the graph, and wherever you go on the mint axis, and wherever you go over 1 on the mint axis, you go up to the curve, which in this case is a line, to see how many chips you're producing. And at that point, where you're on the line, you're producing 12 bags of chips. So you were producing 15, you now have to produce 12. 15 minus 12 is 3. That's what you've lost out on. So yeah, complete the following statements. The opportunity cost of producing a tub of ice cream is blank at point A than it is at point B. The opportunity cost of producing a pound of butter is blank at point B than it is at point A. This was the one I struggled with the most. But what you need to realize is that when you go left on butter, you're decreasing it. But whenever you're going left on butter, you're going up on ice cream. So you're increasing it. And vice versa. Again, the tug of war. We keep on talking about this. The tug of war shows here. So The opportunity cost of producing a tub of ice cream is blank at point A than it is at point B. At point A, producing this ice cream, the opportunity cost will be greater than it is at point B because you're losing out on more as you go. And then it's the same thing the other way around. The opportunity cost of producing a pound of butter is blank at point B than it is at point A. Well, when you're going on butter and you go to the left, then you're getting less butter, which means it's going to increase. So it's greater. The answer is D, greater. I find that one very hard to explain. So if it didn't make sense, text me and maybe I can have another explanation by then. So yeah, that's my bad. That one's difficult for me to explain or to put into words. Oh, okay. So the Uticon. This is the one that people are asking about the most. This is Uticon. If Uticon produces 200 pounds of food per month, it must produce blank gallons of sunscreen in order to be productively efficient. Productively efficient is when you're using all your resources. So on the table, you go to 200 and you go to the corresponding point of sunscreen, which is 50. So your answer is 50. Question 33D. The table so I'm gonna switch over to the pay-per-view. Y'all are on a Febreze can, apologies. So yeah, the opportunity cost of 1 pound of food is blank gallons of sunscreen. So I think the reason this is tripping a lot of people up is because the chart scales by hundreds. I should have written this down before, my bad. The chart scales by hundreds, but this is only asking for 1. So a lot of people are getting like, oh no, what do I do? It's actually not that tricky. They're just trying to confuse you. Since everything is scaling down by a consistent amount here, you can just scale everything up the same amount, if that makes any sense. So it wants to know the opportunity cost of 1, but since all these, since the marginal cost and the marginal trade-off for all of these is 100 and all of these is 50, it doesn't matter. So the opportunity cost of 1 pound of food is the same as the opportunity cost of 100 pounds of food, or 300 pounds of food, or 342 pounds of food. It's all the same. So I would want to work with 100 because it's what's on the table. So the opportunity cost of producing 100 pounds of food is what? Well, opportunity cost is what you lose over what you choose, or the formula is what you sacrifice over what you gain. So whenever you're going up by 1, you're gaining 100. So you're like, oh, sweet, that's sick. I love gaining food. But the cost here is whenever you go up here, you're losing out, or you're going up here as well, my bad. So whenever you are producing here, you're doing 100 of each, but whenever you go up to 200 pounds of food, you're going to lose out on some sunscreen. So you're losing out on 50 sunscreen. So you have 50 over 100, which is equal to 1/2. But let's do the one example, just since that's what the question's asking. Well, let's go up by 1 here. Well, so we gain 1 pound of food. Well, whenever we go up by 1 here, we have to go up by 0.5 here, since that's what the relationship is. The marginal change here is 100. The marginal change here is 50, which is half. So here we'll go up by half. So we're gaining 0.5 sunscreens, and we're losing 1 pound of food. Well, 0.5 over 1 is just 0.5, which is the same as 1/2. So your answer is 1/2. And this can be seen in question 33E. It's the almost exact same thing, but flipped around. And this is where I'm going to give the example I was talking about earlier about the inverse. So now it's asking for 1 gallon of sunscreen. Let's use the same chart. We already know, since all the margins are consistently going up, 1 gallon of sunscreen is the same as 27 gallons, or in this case, what I'm going to do is 50 gallons. So let's say we're going from 50 to 100. This is great. So we're gaining 50, again, sacrifice over gain, and we're losing out on 100 because we're going down here. So we lose out on 100, and that's equal to 2. And again, if you want to do the example of 1 sunscreen, you'll end up gaining 2 pounds, or my bad, messing up here. So whenever you produce 1 extra sunscreen, your sacrifice is 2 pounds of food. But you're gaining your 1 extra sunscreen, which is also equal to 2. And this is, again, what I was saying about the inverse earlier. So this was asking for the opportunity cost of the last thing was 1/2. Well, if you ask for the opportunity cost of food was 1/2 at all points. Well, that means if it's consistent across the entire graph, the opportunity cost of sunscreen, the opposite, will just be the inverse of this, or the reciprocal, just flipped over. 1/2, flip it over, is 2. 2, flip it over, is 1/2, the reciprocal of both. That might sound a little complicated. I'm sorry, sometimes I go on a little tangent that doesn't make sense. But your answer here is 2, and that is that. Okay, so, all right. So this is the same graph that we were shown for question 34. Uticon faces blank opportunity cost and cost of food, and blank opportunity cost and cost of sunscreen. Well, since the margins were consistently 50 on this and 100 on this, and the opportunity cost was the same, that means the graph will look like this. If your graph is ever a straight line, it'll always be constant opportunity cost. Because that means, theoretically, that should mean that the resources perfectly exchange over. So yeah, the answer to this one is B. They are both constant. Question 35. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to switch back over to the me view. Question 35. The marginal benefit of a good or service is the benefit received by consuming one more unit of it. The key word here is marginal. Marginal is just every incremental increase, and then since it's benefit here, it's the benefit you get from every incremental increase. All right, question 36. Oh, whoops. The marginal cost of producing a good or service is the marginal cost of producing a good service is C. The opportunity cost of producing one more unit. So this one's kind of feels like it's trying to trick you, since it this one feels like it's trying to trick you since there's the opportunity cost of producing one more unit and the opportunity cost of consuming one more unit. The reason it's producing is because the initial question asked the marginal cost of producing, not consuming. So yeah, that's why that's it. And it's not the total cost because the word marginal. Question 37. Complete the following sentences. Microsoft's marginal cost of producing the 100th copy of Microsoft Windows 10 is blank. So the marginal cost is the opportunity cost of producing the 100th copy of Windows 10. It's just as simple as it is. Marginal cost is every additional unit, so the marginal cost of this is just going to be the opportunity cost of only the 100th unit. I'm hoping I'm making sense. Okay. So the table shows Brazil's production possibility for ethanol and food crops. This is the same graph from earlier, but now it's in table form. When the quantity of food produced increases from 1 ton of food to 2 tons of food per day, the marginal cost of producing the additional ton of food is blank barrels of ethanol. So when you go from 1 ton of food to 2 tons of food, you go from 64 barrels. You have to sacrifice from 64 to 54 barrels of ethanol. So you just do 64 minus 54, which is 10. Question 39. I think this is the last one. Perfect. Monday Island produces only tomatoes and pineapples. The marginal cost of a tomato is the number of pineapples that must be foregone to get one more tomato. Again, like I've said a million billion times, it's a tug of war. Whenever you have to produce an extra pineapple, whenever you're producing an extra tomato, you're gonna be giving up an extra pineapple since you're productively efficient. So you must forego, or the marginal cost of one tomato is the number of pineapples you're saying, all right, I'm not gonna produce these, I'm gonna produce one more tomato. So the answer is C. You must forego X number of pineapples to produce one more tomato. Yeah, so hopefully this was helpful, the second run through. So yeah, glad to help. Have a great night.